Happy birthday, America! All right, we're celebrating July 4th on January 5th, which makes perfect sense. Stop it. I'm ready in my American uniform. Okay? And let's read about the Declaration of Independence, our nation's birthday.
Woohoo!
And that's what we celebrate on July 4th. Okay. Chapter 20. Declaring Independence. Unless you like to memorize dates, there aren't many that you need to remember. But here are a few that are important. 1215, 1492, 1607, 1620. What happened in those years? You can't remember? Go ahead and try. You might be surprised and find there's more in your brain than you realize. Then, if you need to check, look back on page 100. It's the...
Look back on page...
You're right, it would be...
Look ahead.
Oh, if you need to check. Okay, fair enough.
Look ahead on page...
Yeah, that's correct.
100, not back.
But it's the Magna Carta, Christopher Columbus, the founding of Jamestown, and the founding of Plymouth, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I have another date for you to remember. And this one is the most important of all. Something happened on that day that changed America. It even changed the whole world. It was a day that King George III didn't think about it. Didn't think important. He would find out how wrong he was. The date is July 4th, 1776. That was the day the members of the Second Continental Congress approved a Declaration of Independence. It was a year after the Battle of Bunker Hill, and finally, the Americans had made up their minds to be free of Great Britain. But that wasn't why the world was changed. It was the words they used in that declaration that made all the difference. The delegates believed that if they were going to vote for independence, they should have a good reason. They knew that when they signed the declaration, they became traitors to England. They would be hanged if England captured them. If they were going to take that big risk, they wanted to make it worthwhile. And it would be worthwhile if they could help create a free nation, a great nation, a nation run by its citizens. Something that had never been done before. So, they thought it important to explain exactly what they were doing and why it was necessary to be free of English rule. That's why they asked Thomas Jefferson, one of the members of the Congress, to write a paper called A Declaration. That would. This is very important, people. These are the three reasons, three things really that this declaration says. Tell their beliefs about good government, tell what King George had done wrong, and announce that the colonies were now free and independent states. Some people thought it surprising that Thomas Jefferson was asked to write the Declaration. Jefferson was one of the youngest members of the Continental Congress. He was a tall, shy redhead who loved to read, run, ride horseback, and play the violin. He had a reputation for writing well. John Adams said of him, though a silent member in Congress, he was so prompt, frank, and decisive upon committees and in conversation, not even Samuel Adams was more so, that he soon seized upon my heart. Jefferson had left his wife behind on his Virginia farm, and he missed her. He wasn't sure he could write a good declaration, but John Adams and Benjamin Franklin had faith in him. They talked Thomas Jefferson into trying. Adams told him, "You can write 10 times better than I can." Adams and Franklin were right. Thomas Jefferson knew just what to say, and he said it in a way that inspired people all over the world. The whole Declaration is something to read and think about, but one part will ring in your ears with its greatness. Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That was plain language in the 18th century, but you might have to read it a few times to understand it. It is worth doing. Those are words worth memorizing. All men are created equal. That's what does equal mean? Are we all the same? Look around you. Of course we aren't. Some of us are smarter than others. Some of us are better athletes. And some of us are better looking. And some are nicer. But none of that matters, said Jefferson. We are all equal in the eyes of God. And we are all entitled to equal rights. The right to live, the right to be free, and the right to be able to try to find the kind of life that will make us happy. And that is the whole reason for having governments, he said. Governments are not made to make kings happy. They are for the benefit of the people who are being governed. Governments should have the consent of the governed. Sometimes when ideas are written down, they take on meanings that go beyond what the writers intended. Jefferson's Declaration of Independence was great from the moment he wrote it, but it has grown even greater with the passing of time. He said, all men are created equal. He didn't mention women. Did he mean to include women? No one knows. Perhaps not. We do know that in the 18th century, the words men and mankind included men and women. But very few people, except for Tom Paine, thought much about women's rights. It was the 20th century before women in America had the right to vote. Did Thomas Jefferson mean to include black men when he said all men? Historians argue about that. You'll have to decide for yourself. In 1776, when Jefferson wrote the Declaration, he included a long section in which he described slavery as a cruel war against human nature. Yet Jefferson lived in a slave society and owned slaves himself. He thought slavery was wrong, and he said so. Nothing is more certainly written in the Book of Fate than that these people are to be free, wrote Jefferson. Many congressmen agreed. John Adams spoke out strongly against slavery. Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Rush founded the first anti-slavery society in the New World. But South Carolina and Georgia would not sign the Declaration if it contained the anti-slavery section. So Jefferson's anti-slavery words were taken out. The delegates compromised. Should they have gone ahead without those southern colonies? That would have meant that the Deep South would not have joined in the fight against England. It might have meant defeat for the proposed Union of the States. Jefferson and Adams and Franklin and others thought the Union was more important than the issue of slavery. They knew that staying with England would not bring freedom to the slaves. They thought slavery could be dealt with later. Do you agree with them? Those were tough decisions the delegates were making. It took a civil war to end slavery. Do you think that war could have been avoided? Do you think the delegates should have acted differently in 1776? Of one thing you can be sure. Today, when people all over the world read Jefferson's words, they understand them to mean all people, men, women, and children of all colors and beliefs. All right. So good job. And happy birthday, America. You got it. Bye.